A few years ago, I went to my home country of Brazil, and I got to see my uncle's dog for the first time. It was a white Samoyed dog with white fur and pointed ears. His name is Sebastian, and I even took a picture on my phone with him. So flash forward to last year. My family decided to live in Brazil. We arrived at the airport, and my uncle picks us up in his van. And during the ride to the city, we start discussing some stuff. And I ask, how is Sebastian doing? And my uncle says that he's doing well, or whatever. And I ask if I can see him again. We arrive at his house where I see his wife, and I say hello to her. And standing right next to her was this huge Labrador. I thought it was weird how they would get two dogs and not mention it. I asked my aunt what his name is, and she says, "What are you talking about? This is Sebastian." I stood there for a second and just thought back. It's one thing to forget what color a dog was, but to forget what breed it was entirely seems highly unlikely for me. I played it off, and I pet him for a bit. As soon as I could, I checked my mom's phone to find the picture that I took of me and this dog, and lo and behold, the picture in the camera was that of a Labrador. This is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. I wonder if anybody else has had a similar experience. About 2 years ago, I was dating a girl who lived 30 minutes west of me. To get to her house and back to mine, I had to travel on a single 2-lane country road. Like most country roads, they're often abandoned past a certain time, and the only thing you typically see are deers or coyotes running across the road. I would stay at my girlfriend's house until 2 a.m. or later, and then I would hop on the road and drive home. At this point, I probably drove home from her house between 50 and 60 times. So I got the feel for the road and the accompanied drive. I knew where cops sometimes sat or the typical place that deer would cross. The road had no stop signs but had intersecting roads, so I got used to dropping my speed dramatically whenever I got close to the roads. The only time I didn't drop my speed was when I approached traffic lights, since usually people take these more seriously than stop signs. The forest, cornfields, and the expectation you're alone on the road can easily create a car accident if you're not paying attention, which is why I slowed down at the other intersections. The only stoplight was close to my home and turned the 2-lane country road into a divided 6-lane road. There were 2 lanes on one side and 4 on the other side for turning left, turning right, and 2 main lanes. As I approached this light around 3 a.m., I saw a car probably about a mile ahead sitting at the green light. I'm assuming the lights operated on sensors since the light was green the entire time. At half a mile away, I started to get an eerie feeling because the car was still sitting there. I rarely ever see any other cars on the road, especially this late, and people who are on the road are hurrying home. I have no idea why, but I started to slow down and stay in the lane behind the car. On any other night, I definitely would just switch to the other lane and just cruise through the lights at a reduced speed. As I pulled behind the car, who had been sitting there at the green light for about a few minutes, something felt very off, and almost instinctively, I just stopped dead in my tracks right behind the car. From my car, all I could see is somebody in the driver's seat sitting straight up. It felt like I sat there for an eternity, but in reality, it was probably only several seconds. Almost as soon as my car comes to a complete stop, an 18-wheeler with a trailer barrels through the intersection running the red light. The speed limit on both sides of the road was 60, and the intersection was blocked by brush, so in a second the truck appeared, and just as fast, it disappeared. The light never changed for either side or indicated that a car was coming in any way. I assume the truck driver probably thought the roads were empty at the time because of how late it was, so he just didn't care and just ran through. However, the weirdest part was that as soon as the truck passed through the intersection, the car in front of me immediately switched lanes and turned left. In almost a blink, the car went from stop still to turning away. I was in a lucid state of shock and disbelief at what had just occurred, and just sat there at the green light, pretty much dumbfounded, not knowing how to comprehend what just happened to me. I know if I had driven around the car at the pace I usually go, I would have been T-boned without ever seeing this semi coming at me. There's no doubt about it, but something that night compelled me to act abnormal, and whatever it was, it saved my life. To this day, I still have dreams about that intersection because it's one of the few situations where there is no logical explanation for why I acted the way that I did, but it ended up saving my life. Do you guys know the whole theory about how when people die on one timeline, they shift into another? I think this may have happened to me. Back in early July of this year, my family were going on a trip to Montana to visit our grandparents. Prior to the trip, I had a horrible feeling about going. I kept having flashes of car accidents in my head, and I was sure that we were going to get in some kind of a wreck as soon as we left. It was so strange because I have pretty severe anxiety disorder, but this didn't feel like my anxiety at all, and I never have anxiety about road trips. I actually like going on them a lot. So we left Saturday of that week. I had told my parents I had a bad feeling about driving up there, but they dismissed me as just being anxious. But I had never felt so certain about something in my life. Getting into the car felt like signing my death sentence. So we get about 6 hours in, and at this point, I start to think about how ridiculous I was sounding earlier. And a wave of calmness just washes over me. This is where things really get strange. My dad passes an underpass, and everything just shifts. I felt like I saw everything in slow motion for a whole 4 or so minutes. My parents were joking beforehand, but their faces moved so slowly, and then the light in the car started to shift. This was the scary part because I thought that I must have been going insane. For a few seconds, there was a huge illumination of lights into our car, and I looked at my family, and I cannot tell who they were or what they meant to me. And then it's like everything just came back. The light shifted back and I knew who everybody was, but it felt like something imperceivable had changed. I closed my eyes and tried to make sense of the past few minutes, and when I reached back to remember, I saw chaos. I saw our car and another minivan in shambles on the other side of the highway, right beyond the underpass. And I saw an entire wreck, and I saw chunks of metal mangled. I remember the sensation. I remember everything as if it happened. I know details about being in a car accident that I shouldn't. I know what the horrors of this look like. I know the smell of something burning. The way that it came at me, it was almost like I couldn't breathe. But did this happen? I remember the car in front of us had switched lanes even though there was a truck in front of us, and I realized it at the last second, and by the time I realized it, it hit us with a lateral impact. I have no history of psychosis, and I have never been in any sort of car accident myself. This wasn't PTSD, and I haven't ever had anxiety over being in the car in any way, shape, or form prior to this. And maybe I could have just brushed it off, but I still think about it when I'm driving in my own car. Okay, I have 2 different stories that might not be as cool as some of the rest, but it still weirds me out. One happened just yesterday, and I decided to post it on the sub as it was the second time that something like this has happened, and I didn't know where else to post it or to let anybody else know about my experience. A couple of months ago while doing the dishes, I felt my husband's truck pull up. He has a very large truck, and I can always feel the vibrations of it when he pulls in the driveway along with hearing the engine. I thought that it was weird as it was only 3:30 in the afternoon, and he usually doesn't get home until a little after 6. I heard the garage door open, and a few seconds later, I heard my husband open and close the door to the house. I called out to him from the kitchen saying hello and asking him what he was doing home so early. And clear as day, it was 100% my husband's voice, and he answered, "Oh, I just decided to head home early today. I'm gonna use the bathroom really quick." To which I then heard him walk into the hall where the restroom is, click on the fan, and shut the door. I continued doing the dishes, and after about 10 minutes I was done doing everything, and I wondered what was taking him so long in the bathroom. I went to go check on him, and to my surprise, he was nowhere to be found. I checked the garage, and the garage door was shut. Weird, but I go to the window and realize that his truck isn't there. Knowing that I had just had a mini conversation with him, I immediately check Friend Finder and see that he's at his office. I called him and asked him what he was doing, to which he tells me, "I'm about to head home, babe. I'm gonna leave early today." I told him what happened, and he just kind of shrugged it off and told me I imagined it. Obviously, it's probably possible, but I know what happened. My twins were napping, so I was enjoying some peace and quiet and had no TV or music on when my husband got home, or at least when I thought he got home the first time. The second glitch happened yesterday morning. I had been on the back deck with my husband drinking coffee while he played with our tiki toss ring game. I told him I was going to go inside and check on the kids in the playroom, and he told me that he was going to come in as well, and he followed right behind me. He stayed in the bathroom. We have this French door in our master bedroom that leads to the deck, and we came in that way. While I went off to the playroom, a few minutes later, I walked into the bathroom, and my husband had his back turned towards the door, messing with something on the bed, and then I said to him, "I'm a snake," which is an inside joke that we have between each other. As soon as I spoke, he immediately turned around and walked into our bathroom. I had my head down to look at my phone by now, but I could clearly see his legs and body walk past me and into the bathroom. Not even 2 seconds later, I hear the ring of the tiki toss game clink, and I hear my husband say, "I'm a snake," and he walks into the bathroom from the deck through the French doors. I went white as a ghost apparently, because he asked me what was wrong, and then I told him that I had just watched him walk past me and into the bathroom, just like the time before, and he just kind of giggled and brushed it off and said, "Yeah, okay," or something along those lines. Ever since yesterday happened, I've been thinking about the time before, and I just get freaked out knowing that something strange is going on, and I can't explain it. I had bought my younger daughter a doll at the dollar store. It was special in that it had a magnet in the tongue that when you held the included metallic lollipop and ice cream bar up to it, it would look as though it was licking on it. For our situation at the time, this was a pretty pricey doll. I spent more than I should because I thought that it was so cute. Fast forward a couple of months, and the doll is no longer a new toy. It has been played with and is now mixed in with the other toys. One day, I pick up the pile of toys in the living room to throw in the toy box. One after another, I start tossing them in, like a teddy bear, some blocks, the doll, a toy tractor, a tea set, and the doll with... And I said to myself, wait a second. There is now a second doll just exactly like the first. It seems no newer or older than the original. The only difference was that there was no second lollipop and ice cream for this doll. It creeped me out, and there had been no visitors and no one to drop off this second doll. We definitely did not buy it. The first one was way too pricey for our budget at the time anyways. There's nowhere where this doll could have come from, and I've never figured out where it did come from. My daughter is past the age to play with dolls now, and the second doll is still here in the closet, packed in a box with the first. Not that I can tell which is which still creeps me out, to be honest with you. A glitch in the Matrix with no reason or purpose is all that I can come up with. My mom works every day, but comes home around 6 p.m. At the time, I was at my friend's house, and I had a sleepover at her place, and I was dropped off back at mine by her mother. When I got back home, my mom began making dinner, and we talked until I noticed a new picture on our refrigerator, and it was a picture of a cat in a drawer with an older TV and very, very dirty walls. It was taken in the year 1999, so before I was born. So I know that it could not have been one of my old cats. And because of that, I asked my mom about it. She responded as if she didn't know what I was talking about and seemed dumbfounded by that picture and asked me who put that up on the fridge. And I said I don't know, because I had gotten home and looked at it for a good while, and I decided to ask my mom about it, and neither of us know who put that picture up, and neither of us can recognize that cat. My mom only had a dog and a hamster growing up, even when she moved out. So So we only got a cat when my mom and dad moved into my grandparents, where the cat lived outdoors because my grandma is allergic to cats. It was pinned with a butterfly magnet, which we never used because we only have one picture on the refrigerator. It's black and white, and it's also of a cat. It has no relation to the cat in the drawer. So the question is, why would this picture be here? Did somebody sneak into the house and put it up when me and my mom were not looking? I highly doubt it. It just seemed to come out of nowhere, and there's no explanation for where it came from. So I recognize that this sounds pretty crazy, but I had the most bizarre experience ever. My life had been very tumultuous for the past few months. My marriage had been pretty much disastrous and falling apart. And once separated, I started seeing this guy who decided that I wasn't worth his trouble any longer. And even after a reach out, I found that he no longer cared about me. I was sufficiently triggered and had already tried to take my life on a previous attempt. So one day I decided to go for a walk. And because I was so unstable at the time, I planned on it being my last. I was going to go for a walk and walk down to the river near my house. I started off in the neighborhood facing the river. There was a chance to cross a road called Fort Meigs Road, and I did. It led into another neighborhood. I continued straight and then turned left. At this point, I should have been perpendicular with the road leading to the river. Then I turned right, then left, still perpendicular to the river. I continued to walk forward, but the road didn't look familiar. In fact, it looked like any other road I'd seen in my city. There was a ravine to my right with an up and down bamboo fence and houses on my left and right, and there were also lights. But technically, according to my neighborhood map, I should have been in the middle of a cemetery. I didn't pay any attention. I just kept on going forward. It felt like it was taking forever, though. Then, all of a sudden, I noticed a familiar bend in the road, but it didn't make any sense because, for all intents and purposes, that bend should have been several roads over an opposite-facing direction. I freaked out, and it turns out that I was heading somewhere to do something that I was going to regret. As I mentioned earlier, I was going to take my own life. And now I found myself somehow or in some way heading home. I immediately called my mom because I was freaking out, and when I think about it to this day, I still do. Obviously, there are things that I still need to finish in my life. It terrifies me to death when I think about it. However, knowing what I was about to do was even more frightening. I was about to end it all, as I tried to do a previous time, but instead of ending up in a place where I would have done something that I would have regretted, I ended up on the path back home.